Do you want to come closer? How about really close?
Good morning. We are less than a week away from an election that offers a once-in-a-generation chance for real change. To deliver real change, we have to get Brexit sorted in 6 months and move on to clearing the mess left by 10 years of Tory and Lib Dem rule, to end austerity and invest in our people and public services. We want to bring people together because we know that whichever way you voted in the 2016 referendum, the majority of the people in this country have the same fundamental interests and are united by a desire to see things change for the better after years in which they have only got worse. Boris Johnson doesn't care about uniting communities, and when he calls working class people feckless, losers and criminals, he shows he only has contempt for the people he wants to lead. That's precisely why he wants to use his sellout Brexit to hand even more control of the economy to billionaires and bad bosses, and that's why they're funding the Tory campaign. And he wants to use it, as Jeremy Corbyn revealed last week, to put our NHS up for sale to Donald Trump's America. He will not get Brexit done. His half-baked deal will lead to years of uncertainty and trade negotiations and seriously compromise our policing and security arrangements. Throughout Tory Brexit bungling, we have sought to respect the referendum result while keeping the country together and maintaining a close relationship with our European neighbours. Because whether you voted Leave or Remain, if you want a more decent, just society, Labour is on your side. Labour offers a credible leave option that protects worker, consumer rights and environmental standards. We will negotiate that and put to the British people for a final say on our future with Europe. And Jeremy Corbyn will act as an honest broker, not picking a side, so he can be trusted by the British people to implement whatever we decide and then bring our country together, Leave and Remain voters, to tackle the enormous challenges of our age. That's how we'll move on from 3.5 years of Brexit and rebuild Britain for the many, not the few. So I would like to welcome to the podium to address you, the man who can and will make real change happen, Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Lou, and thank you all for being here this morning. And Keir is on the stage with us as well, and we'll be dealing with questions when I've concluded the remarks I want to make. I'd also like to say a big thank you to Unison for giving us this space this morning, which is part of the old EGA hospital next to us and the head office next door. So thank you very much to them for their help. Thank you all again for being here. In this election, we've shown how Boris Johnson is trying to hijack Brexit to sell out our National Health Service and working people of this country. He's trying to hijack the hope for change that many people had in 2016 and use it for his own ends. For Johnson, Brexit is about something very different from what most people voted for. For him, it's about reversing the hard-fought gains by working-class people over generations so that corporations and billionaires can cream off more profits. It's about unleashing Thatcherism on steroids in our country. Johnson and his Conservatives know there is no support for the damaging agenda that they want to inflict on this country. So instead, they're trying to use it under the banner of Brexit instead. But Labour is exposing this deception. Last week, we revealed the secret plot to sell out our NHS as part of a toxic trade deal with Donald Trump, which could mean the NHS paying up to $500 million more per week for medicines from the United States and other places. As trade experts have since confirmed, the NHS is very much on the table in these talks. But the secret documents not only shredded the Prime Minister's credibility on the NHS, they undermined his credibility on Brexit also. Get Brexit done, the Tory slogan at the heart of the election campaign says, is a fraud on the British people. While Labour will get Brexit sorted in 6 months, because we won't be ripping up our main trading relationship, Johnson's deal will be just the beginning of years of more painful negotiations and broken promises. And today, I can reveal further hard evidence that Johnson is deliberately misleading the people about this. I have here the document. Northern Ireland Protocol, unfettered access to the UK internal market. What we have here is a confidential report by Johnson's own government, marked official sensitive, that exposes the falsehoods that Boris Johnson has been putting forward. This is cold, hard evidence that categorically shows the impact a damaging Brexit deal would have on large parts of our country. 15 pages that paint a damning picture of Johnson's deal on the issue of Northern Ireland in particular. We caught the Tories red-handed selling out our NHS in the Trump trade talks, and now we've caught Johnson red-handed misrepresenting his own Brexit deal. So let's test some of Johnson's claims against his own government's findings. Johnson has said definitively, and I quote, "There will be no checks between Northern Ireland and Great Britain under his deal." He told the people of Northern Ireland to their faces, "There will be no forms, no checks, no barriers of any kind. You will have unfettered access." Then look at page 5 of this confidential report, which will be in your hands in a moment. In private, the government says something very, very different. It says there will be customs declarations and security checks between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. It's there in black and white. It says there will be customs declarations, absolutely clearly, for trade going from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. The government cannot rule out regulatory checks, rules of origin checks, and animal and public health checks also. And for trade going the other way, from Great Britain to Northern Ireland, there will be all of the above, plus potentially damaging tariffs. This drives a coach and horses through the Prime Minister's claim that there will be, in his words, no border in the Irish Sea. It's simply not true. Johnson's deal will be disastrous for businesses and jobs all across the UK. And the government's confidential report confirms this. Let me remind you, Johnson said his deal was, I quote, "a great deal for Northern Ireland." But look at page 8 of this report, and you'll get it in a minute, so you'll have to contain your excitement for 1 second. Page 8 of this report, for what the government really thinks, is clearly there. His deal will inflict huge economic damage on Northern Ireland. It will, I quote, be highly disruptive to the Northern Irish economy. It says this deal will be the equivalent of imposing tariffs on 30% of all purchases made in Northern Ireland. What will that mean? The report spells it out. High street goods are likely to increase in price, which is likely to affect business profitability. If that's how Johnson defines a great deal for Northern Ireland, what's he got in store for the rest of us? In fact, it isn't just about Northern Ireland. Page 9 of the confidential report reveals that Johnson's damaging deal may have, quote again, a significant effect on the economies of Scotland and Wales. This is people's livelihoods we're talking about. This is why this government is hiding this information from the people of Wales, Scotland, and of Northern Ireland. And there's more. Page 10 warns of the potential for fraud, saying Northern Ireland could become, quote, a backdoor into the GB market for the avoidance of import duties. But then let's test another of the Prime Minister's claims. When I debated him in the first leaders' debate on ITV, he said, and I'm quoting him again, "We have a deal that keeps the whole of the UK together as we come out of the EU." Compare and contrast page 12 of his government secrets report, and I quote, "The withdrawal agreement has the potential to separate Northern Ireland in practice from whole swathes of the UK's internal market, meaning Northern Ireland will be symbolically separated from the rest, from the Union." Remember, When Johnson spoke at the DUP conference last year, he told them that no Conservative government could ever countenance such a thing. He sold out his friends in the DUP after promising he wouldn't. How can you trust that his deal doesn't sell out again? This document is very ominous. There will be other secret reports like this one in every government department that reveal the disastrous impact of his policies on the safety of the food that you eat, on the rights you have at work, on the pollution of the air that we breathe, and on the jobs and industries that people work in. These reports exist, but the government is hiding them from you, because in this election, the Conservatives want you to vote blind. Ask yourself, if they hid this report and the ones that I revealed last week, what else are they hiding? What else will they sell you out on? At every stage throughout this campaign, Boris Johnson has chosen to deepen divisions. His whole political strategy is to turn one side of the Brexit debate against the other. I start from a very different place. I believe a Prime Minister must talk to and listen to the whole country, because we have to bring our divided country together. And if, as a result, people accuse me of talking to both sides at once in the Brexit debate, then so be it. I'm proud to do that. Why would I only want to talk to half the country? I don't want to live in half of a country. That's why I've set out honestly how a Labour government will deal with Brexit, so we can bring our country together and get on with delivering the real change that people are crying out for. First, Labour will quickly secure a sensible deal based on the terms we've already discussed with the European Union, including a new customs union and a close single market relationship and guarantees of rights and protections. Unlike Boris Johnson's fraudulent Brexit, a deal on our terms will respect the priceless peace process in Northern Ireland and protect manufacturing and people's jobs. And then we'll put that deal to a public vote within 6 months. Those who want to leave the EU without selling out our NHS or trashing our economy will be able to vote for that. Those who want to remain in the EU will be able to vote for that. Either way, only a Labour government will take the decision out of the hands of politicians and trust the people with that final say. And in that vote, my role will be to be the honest broker, not taking sides, committed to carrying out whatever the people decide. Because once that decision has been made, we'll need a Prime Minister able to speak to both sides if we are to bring our country together. I think we've had just about enough of this division. We've had just about enough of the government only listening to half of the people. Labour stands not just for the 52% or the 48%, but for the 99%. And people can trust Labour to honour our commitments. Johnson pretends the NHS is not on the table in his frankly toxic talks with President Trump, just as he pretends there won't be a border in the Irish Sea. But the truth is, not even his own government believes him. I leave you to draw your own conclusions as to whether Johnson's statements are consistent with the new evidence I've revealed today. There is no wonder he's avoiding scrutiny in this election campaign. On Brexit, on the NHS, on public services, and so much else, you simply cannot trust the Conservatives. I believe, we believe, the Labour Party believes, it's time for real change. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. You'll be handed out now 2 documents, the Northern Ireland Protocol, unfettered access to UKIM, and background notes on the Northern Ireland Protocol. I'm going to take questions in 3, starting with Laura from the BBC, and Dan Hewitt from ITV, and Jason Farrell from Sky.
Have you all got the documents yet?
No, just being handed out.
Good.
Just give you a minute.
you very much, Louise. I'm afraid because we've just had the documents, we haven't been able to have a look, so it's hard to ask about any of the details, but of course we'll look through them very carefully from now on. But Mr Corbyn, you're saying the Tories are hiding details about the kind of deal that they would like to do after Brexit. But you're also hiding a much bigger issue, whether if you become Prime Minister, you believe we should be in or out of the European Union.
Dan? Oh. No, Dan, at the back there.
Yeah, to echo what Laura says, we haven't seen the documents properly, so it's hard to ask questions on them. Your Home Secretary, your Brexit Secretary, your Foreign Secretary, many in your party are quite clear, Mr Corbyn, how they would vote in the referendum. You're seriously asking the people to make you Prime Minister without saying how you would vote. And secondly, if Britain does vote to leave in the referendum you're promising, can you say how long the transition period would be and when we would finally leave the European Union?
Your own deal that you're negotiating over the next months if you become Prime Minister, would it include, as John McDonnell said to me in an interview, trying to get an insurance to stay in the customs union? If so, if you're doing that, are you offering people a democratic choice at the next referendum between staying in the customs union or staying in the European Union? And secondly, Mr Starmer, you're going to be involved in negotiating this deal. Can you guarantee that you would be supporting the deal in a second referendum?
Jeremy?
Right. Thank you for your questions. Well, Laura, I'm not hiding in this. What I'm saying is that we have to bring an end to this debate. We will negotiate a credible deal with the European Union. We'll have a negotiating team representing our cabinet undertaking this, and we'll put that deal to a vote of the British people. I will maintain a position of honest broker to ensure the negotiations go ahead and that it is a credible deal for leaving, but leaving the EU, to be put alongside Remain. My purpose in all this is to bring an end to the debate and the divisions, but it's also to protect the manufacturing industry and trade relationships that we have with the European Union. After all, around half of all of our trade is with the European Union. What the Prime Minister is offering to do is walk out the EU, do a trade deal with the United States, and we've exposed in the documents last week exactly what direction that takes us in. And we will be, and Keir will explain this, negotiating a specific trading and customs arrangement with the EU, which protects the Good Friday Agreement, protects the agreement in Northern Ireland and ensures that trade carries on, but it will be an offer of the trade relationship we would have outside the European Union. I think this is a sensible and intelligent way of proceeding.
Shall I just pick up on we've never suggested staying in the customs union. We've suggested a customs union between the EU27 and the UK, and that's a perfectly sensible position to adopt because, frankly, thousands of manufacturing companies across the whole of the United Kingdom have said exactly the same thing to me every time I've met them, which is in order to preserve our sector, you have to be in a customs union with the EU. So it's not staying in the customs union, it's being in a customs union. It's also, frankly, the only way to avoid a hard border in Northern Ireland. On the question of whether that offers a choice, I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people and communities that voted to leave, and the idea that there's groupthink, that everybody was voting along the lines of the customs union, is, in my view, not borne out by those discussions. People voted for different reasons, and many people who voted to leave have said to me, but of course I want to preserve our manufacturing base and our jobs in our regions and in our economy. That's a perfectly sensible position, it seems, for me to take. On the question of the deal, I mean, I've always been very clear where I lie on this, and I voted Remain last time, I'd do it again. But I'm very confident that we can secure that deal within the time frame. We would not have surfaced the question of a customs union and single market alignment if we hadn't already talked to the EU about that. I've been talking to them, Jeremy's been talking to them for 3 years. I'm confident that could be secured. I'm very confident it could be secured both as to the content and the timetable And I think that whether you voted Remain or Leave, you can have a strong view on what the best Leave deal is. We've been proposing it for 3 years, and the EU, of course, want the best Leave deal as well. So I don't see that as a particular problem. I think this can be resolved within 6 months with a referendum.
Thank you. Andy from Channel 5, then Mikey from The Mirror, and Francis Elliott from The Times.
Thank you. Andy Bell, 5 News. Mr Corbyn, you say if Boris Johnson is hiding this, what else is he hiding? There's been a lot of talk about the NHS and privatisation. I think a lot of people will be concerned that when you talk about privatisation of the NHS, they will hear the possibility of them being charged for things in the future on the NHS which they haven't been charged for up to now. Can you set the record straight and say that's not what you mean? Or maybe set the record straight and say, do you believe that a Boris Johnson government would be prepared to start charging people for NHS services which they don't now get charged for?
Hi, Jeremy. Mikey from The Mirror. You've laid out what you say is cold, hard evidence that Boris Johnson is not telling the truth about his Brexit policy. Are you concerned at all that evidence and facts have become so alien to this campaign that this just isn't going to make a difference to people?
Who's become so alien to the campaign?
Evidence and facts.
I thought you were being personal there against somebody.
Hi, Jeremy. It's Francis Elliott from The Times. You said that people who voted for Brexit voted for hope for change. I wondered what change you thought that they were hoping that they were going to get. And could you just explain what the mandate, the democratic, the mandate for the next referendum will be? Will it include EU citizens, 16, 17-year-olds? In which case, how can it be, compared to the 16 vote? It would be on a different mandate.
Thank you.
Okay. Andy, thanks for your question. The NHS is underfunded. The NHS has had 10 billion of contracts handed out to the private sector since the austerity regime began in 2010, and increasingly very expensive medicines are often not available because NICE cannot get a reasonable price for them. We managed, after a lot of pressure, to get them to supply Acambi, but they don't tell us how much they paid for Acambi, and there are other medicines as well. In reality, if you're very wealthy and you need that medicine, you can afford to buy it. 99% of the population are not wealthy enough to buy it. They can't buy it because that is the whole direction in which we go. And so our point is that you continue to underfund the NHS, then you put all of the principles at risk. But also, with the documents that we revealed last week, it is absolutely clear that the health market and the medicine market is absolutely on the agenda in the trade talks with the USA, and the extension of the lifetime of patents on medicines is on the table as well, which means that medicine prices will go up rather than go down. And many patients don't realise how much medicines cost because, quite rightly, they're not expected to pay for them because the NHS has the principle of being free at the point of use, and that would obviously be what we will ensure it absolutely is. And so I think all of the alarm bells we've sounded on the National Health Service are absolutely correct and credible. And I tell you what, many people in this country are alarmed at the future of the National Health Service under a Conservative government, and particularly with the kind of trade deal he wants to do with the USA. And when Boris Johnson himself is on record in the past as saying the NHS is a monopolistic provider of healthcare, yes, it is. That's how it should be. It's a public service that should be there for all people. On the point that made from the Mirror, yes, facts in this election tend to become a little bit elusive, and you sometimes feel like you're in the world of the Reverend Dodgson and Alice in Wonderland in the presentation of facts by the Prime Minister. Hence, we've made this document available today. Francis, thank you for your question, and Keir may want to come in on this and the other points as well. People voted in 2016 for lots of reasons. Angry about lack of investment in their communities, concern over the future, and they took the decision that they did. We've had 3 years of debate and discussion about this. We made it very clear that we supported the principle of a customs union from a speech that I made in Coventry in the early part of 2017 when we set out our view that there had to be a customs union with the European Union in the future. And we have discussed that with officials and politicians across Europe, and Keir and myself have been in Brussels many times, and people on both sides of the debate in 2016 recognise that if you break up your trading relationship with your nearest partner and you have just-in-time deliveries in manufacturing processes, if you impose a 2-minute delay on trucks at Dover, you rapidly have a queue back up the M20 and the other side in northern France. It is just-in-time deliveries that would be affected by this. Medicine supplies would be affected. Food supplies would be affected. There has to be an effective trading relationship with Europe, and we would negotiate that, albeit at the end of it we would be outside the European Union, but we would have that effective trading relationship. You ask about people voting in the referendum. We've been very clear from our previous manifesto, as well as this one, that we will lower the voting age to 16 because we think that's the right thing to do. 16-year-olds already vote in Scotland and in Wales, and we think that should be extended across the whole of the UK. I see absolutely no contradiction in that at all. It's young people's future that's at stake here. Let them take part in that discussion and in that debate, and we will be doing that as a priority from a Labour government.
Can I just come in on this truth and evidence point, because I've always been a fan of evidence, and this document is significant because it's a Treasury document. I appreciate you've only just got it. This is the advice being given to the Prime Minister about his own deal, and that's why it's important. It's not coming from us, it's coming from the government. And as to the truth element, the Prime Minister said repeatedly, there will be no checks in the Irish Sea. He made a big thing about it on Super Saturday in Parliament. He then said that if anybody asks you for any documents or checks, chuck them in the bin and tell them to phone me. This exposes that for what it is, which is untrue. And if you've got the document, it's page 5, where it sets out what the checks will be going from Great Britain to Northern Ireland in the east-west column, and there are 6 checks there, and what checks there will be in the Northern Ireland to Great Britain column, which is the west-east, and that's 2 sets of checks: customs, regulatory, safety. So that exposes the untruth of what Boris Johnson said. The evidence is coming from his own Treasury. So that's pretty clear. I think it's important also to appreciate why this advice is being given to Boris Johnson. And it's his own team saying, if you want to sign a trade deal with other countries in the world, you have to seal this border, because other countries won't do a trade deal with you if this border is left unchecked. So this is not just saying this is what the EU or Ireland are going to insist on. The advice is, if you want a trade deal, you are going to have to put these checks in the Irish border. And then there's the question, Johnson's always said, well, there won't really be any impact, it's a good deal, nothing could be better. And that's where page 8 is so critical. Because, you know, advice from the Treasury to Johnson, under your deal for exports, 98% of Northern Ireland exporters to GB are SMEs who are likely to struggle to bear this cost. 98%. We're not talking about a small percentage of businesses. And then further down, if you go to the imports column, the cumulative effect of this for businesses in Northern Ireland, equivalent of a 30% tariff. So the issue of whether there are going to be checks is absolutely blown out the water by this document, as is the suggestion that it won't be bad for business, it'll be good for business. So truth and evidence important. This exposes the untruth of Johnson, and the evidence is coming from his own Treasury.
Okay. Just time for 3 more. Heather from The Guardian, and then Lizzie from The Independent, and Adam from Business Insider.
Jeremy, in the light of the Jewish Labour Movement submission to the HRC yesterday, can you reassure voters that where there are Labour members who troll or bully other people because they're Jewish or share material that's clearly anti-Semitic, you won't protect them, you'll drive them out of the party, even if they're your friends and allies?
Lizzie?
Thank you. Hi, Jeremy. John McDonnell has said that you, if there was a hung parliament, you would govern alone as a minority government. Are you ruling out coalitions or any kind of electoral alliance with other parties, including the SNP?
Thank you, and Adam.
Hi, good morning. Adam Payne from Business Insider. Probably a question for Keir. You've talked about the need for a new customs union and single market alignment. Can you elaborate perhaps on the second point? Are you talking about full alignment and opting in with all single market rules? As the EU's previously said, that only full alignment will ensure there are no checks or frictions whatsoever on the island of Ireland.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for your question. Anti-Semitism has no place whatsoever in our society or in my party, the Labour Party. Since I became leader, we've introduced systems in order to assess anti-Semitism cases, to take reports on people that have committed anti-Semitic acts, and to take action on them, suspension, and, if necessary, expulsion from the party. I was concerned that there weren't enough processes in place when I became leader in 2015. Those procedures have been put in place. I was concerned of the delay in dealing with a number of cases, partly through legal reasons, and I therefore instituted a new rule in July dealing with egregious cases that can be very rapidly dealt with. Anyone who's using anti-Semitic trolls or attacking people using anti-Semitic language or abuse in any form is in breach of our party procedures, is in breach of our rules, and they will be dealt with, as I would hope they would be dealt with in any other political party where anyone is behaving in that way. All political parties must make it clear racism in any form has no place whatsoever in our political life. The number of cases is a very, very, very small proportion of our total 500,000 membership. But one case is one too many, and we do take action on them rapidly and effectively, and we will always do that. I want to live in a society where racism is driven out, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or any other form of racism. On the question from Lizzie from The Independent, thanks for your question. We're fighting this election on a very clear, fully costed, well-prepared manifesto which will present real hope for the people of this country, that we turn our backs on the years of austerity and we invest in housing, health and education for the future, and we bring jobs in through our green industrial revolution. I'm very proud of our manifesto. We're the only party to put forward a comprehensive manifesto. We're the only party to put forward a fully costed manifesto, which means we get a lot of very tough questions on it all. And I'm very happy to take those tough questions. I have to say the toughest press conference I'd done was yesterday with Year 6 in a primary school in Peterborough, because they ask very direct and very good questions. But we're there to answer those questions because I believe we should. And in government, we will carry that manifesto out. We're not forming coalitions with anybody. We're not doing electoral pacts with anybody. We're campaigning in this election proudly as the Labour Party to bring about that election victory next Thursday. And this weekend, we will have thousands and thousands of our party members out on every high street all over the country campaigning for a Labour victory next Thursday. And you know what? Change is coming.
Adam, on your point, the Customs Union Single Market Alignment model has been chosen by us after extensive discussions with businesses and the economy. In other words, we've taken the view that's the only way to preserve our economy because so much of our trade is with the EU. And here's the stark choice in this election. You either preserve that economic model or you rip it up, which is what Boris Johnson wants to do, because his deal is to move away from that. Once you've ruptured your trading arrangements with the EU, you have to look elsewhere for your trade, which is why it is inevitable that he'll do a trade deal with America. Whatever he says, it's inevitable to make up for rupturing trade with the EU. And once you're in the territory of doing a deal with America, whether you like it or not, the NHS is going to be on the table because the drug companies in America for years have argued that they want to break open and open up the, as they call it, the British health market. That is going to be part and parcel of those discussions. It's inevitable where that heads. We have gone for this model because we think it's good for the economy. We also think that, honestly, it's the only way to preserve the open border in Northern Ireland. And when we say single market alignment, what we mean by that Is alignment sufficient to avoid checks and friction on the border? There will have to be a mechanism for agreeing that and pillars of governance, which we've discussed with the EU, but the model is one that keeps us economically close to the EU so that the success of our businesses over the last 40 to 50 years can be preserved going forward rather than ripped up.
Thank you. We've got time for just one more, so we have Liz from Channel 4.
Sorry, Liz, we should have put you into the last batch.
Okay, so I was just going to ask you, you're talking about Boris Johnson's comments about working class voters. When I talk to working class voters up and down the country, many of them are leaving the Labour Party, and when I ask them why, they say Jeremy Corbyn. So do you think that Labour would have a better chance of winning the general election without you as the leader?
I think Marmite's really good for you. Some people like it, some people don't. I lead the party, and I'm proud to lead the party. I'm proud of the manifesto we've got. I'm proud of the activities and determination of our party members. As Prime Minister, I want to bring our country together. As Prime Minister, I want to redress the grotesque imbalances in our society. I'm fed up with a society where too many people depend on food banks to survive. Too many children are growing up not knowing where their home will be in 6 months' time. Too many children are in oversized classes in their schools. And too many people are sleeping rough. And too many people in middle age, thinking there was security in their lives, suddenly find they're having to pay the price of austerity by borrowing money to put their kids through university, borrowing money to help their parents get the social care that they need. None of this is necessary. If every last bit of our manifesto was carried out, every last word of it, it would take public services and public spending just below the levels of France and Germany. That's how far backwards we've gone in this country under austerity. We will change that, and I'm utterly determined to do that. I could reply in lots of ways, but I believe personal abuse and personal attacks demean and lower politics, so I never reply. That's how it is with me, and I've got a jar of Marmite in my cupboard to prove it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for coming. We're going to leave you with the documents, have time to digest, and look forward to debating them with you over the next few days.
Keir, they want us to hold the document up.